Yeah, you do.
But first time ever, so, and they did find it right away, so copies of that.
Labor itself.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi. Sorry. Hey. How are ya? Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. It's the Wednesday, March 19th Finance Committee meeting. Tonight's agenda is the petition articles, and we have a new day. Health imperatives, a new day. Come on up.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Julia Keogh. I'm the president of the New Day, well, Health Imperatives, and a New Day is one of the programs of it. And I have materials. I don't know if you want me to pass them out.
Oh, yeah.
So we're a relatively large nonprofit that has programs from Weymouth all the way down to Nantucket, and vital health services and human services. And what we're trying to do is really pull together all of the services that prevent violence, interpersonal violence, and promote health and wellness, and really serve people in a comprehensive way. The request today is for the program called A New Day, which is our sexual assault counseling and domestic violence counseling program. And the way the state funds these programs is there's only one provider in each catchment area. So we're the only provider of sexual assault counseling in Plymouth County. So anytime someone is assaulted, a police officer or the hospital will call us and we'll respond. We have a 24-hour hotline, and we provide one-on-one individual counseling for not only the victims but their families. We also do some work with children who are victims of sexual assault. And we do a lot of groups for parents in different languages. And we're really trying to make sure that we're not only responding to these, but preventing. You've probably read a lot lately, but there's all sorts of increased, at least, reporting of incidents in schools. And so we're trying to get out to the individual communities within our area and make sure that we are doing everything from not only letting people know where we are, but teaching kids to sort of be bystanders so they can prevent these things. And so it's really critical that we have adequate funding in order to do some of this outreach to the particular towns, and we've been very grateful to have your support for the last few years, and had requested $5,000 for this year to be able to continue to do the work. And I'm also really interested in hearing from anybody and what we can do more of. I think while a lot of people know about us, not everybody does, and unfortunately over 80% of all sexual assaults are not reported to the police. People don't go to the hospital. So we want to let people know that we're always there for confidential assistance. Sure.
Does this replace the Women's Crisis Center?
This used to be called the Women's Crisis Center, yeah. Then they changed it to A New Day, and now we're going back to really talking about our programs across the board, but it's it's the same thing.
Where does the rest of the funding come from? So you certainly don't do it all with $5,000.
No, so we get a lot of money through the state from the federal government, Violence Against Women Act. We also raise private funds from individuals and events. Of all the programs that we do, whether it's the domestic violence shelter or some of the health services, the sexual assault programs are the most underfunded, and that's why it's really important for us to try to access as many resources as possible.
How many towns actually contribute funding? And
Oh.
what is the average amount that you, what is the amount by town if you can?
You know what, that's an excellent question, and I don't have that information with me. I'm so sorry. I can find out, but I believe the average is 5,000, and it does vary. There's certainly more communities, like the city of Brockton actually gives us more than that because it's so large. But I can definitely follow up with that information.
Compound question. I think it's a very necessary service for which you folks offer. Now, your contract with Commonwealth?
Yeah, with the State Department of Public Health and Public Safety.
And the principal fund that you get is through federal reimbursement, right? It's not through direct state funds. If you look at the state budget, they're not going to see allocating X amount of dollars going towards.
No, that's a great question. It's a number of different funding streams. There is a state line item for sexual assault counseling, and there's also funding that comes through DPH from the feds, and then federal funding that comes through the Executive Office of Public Safety. It's kind of like a patchwork, and a lot of it supports the general infrastructure, but there are certain pots of money that are targeted to particular issues. So for example, there's some money that comes for Portuguese-speaking or people with linguistic minorities who need additional assistance, or there are particular grants for the children. So it's very complicated.
If I may.
Yeah.
So the question, I appreciate that. I think the question comes down to is how much are you actually funded truly year over year by the state that comes from actual monies from the state versus grants? Ultimately, I guess the big question is going to be, what is your annual budget and how do you use the funds?
Oh, so the annual budget for the overall agency is $10.4 million, but there are, again, individual programs. A lot of it is for family planning. We also do the WIC, which is the Women's, Infants, and Children program. This is about $1 million program. And the vast majority of it, I'd say 97% of it, is state and federally funded.
That's a new day specifically.
Yeah, I'm trying to really increase that so we can do more, add more value. Because these state and federal contracts have been actually reduced during the economic downturn. There's a lot of attention at the federal level now that the White House released a white paper on sexual assault, particularly in colleges and high schools. And so hopefully there'll be, increased funding over time. Sure.
Well, what strikes me, I think they're all very valuable points. It's multifaceted. So how many programs total does Comparative run?
Well, so that's an excellent question. We have anywhere from, depending on how you count the programs, there are 40 programs of varying sizes, but the sort of large categories are violence and health, and within the violence, the large categories are the sexual assault, domestic violence. We're in the courts doing helping people with restraining orders, and then we run an emergency shelter for victims of violence. And then we have 9 family planning clinics. So those are across the whole region, and there are a number of programs within that, but it's essentially reproductive health and disease planning. We do some work with people in prisons who are HIV positive and reintegrating into society. And then finally, we do the health care, and we do health care for adjudicated youth, so people in custody of the state's Youth Department of Youth Services. And we do abuse prevention programs for young parents. So teen and young adults who are having children, we have home visiting programs that help them, be good parents and hopefully move to economic self-sufficiency. So those are the large categories. And then the WIC program I mentioned earlier. So it's been very challenging because it's almost like it's a number of individual nonprofits instead of one large nonprofit. And when I came on board, the board of directors had really asked me to look at how are these programs operating and within which areas, and how can we integrate them so we're helping people more comprehensively and not operating like individual silos with, just managing within the budget, but really looking at what's the key service. So if sexual assault becomes, or it's clear that it's a bigger issue than we are allocating money toward, we need to be able to take money from other sources and really make sure that we're doing what we can to prevent that.
I may have misspoke. I think I have 3 other.
I don't know,
Well,
microphone, no, I'm just kidding.
Honestly, I'm gonna send him a moment too. I think it was stupid I didn't make it, so I didn't have to do that, but unfortunately, the average spend last year was $260 per person. If you help 40,000 people
Yeah.
across the entire,
Yeah.
entire organization. This is the challenge back, which is, I don't think we've ever, actually, I've been on this
Yeah.
group for 9 years, I've never
Yeah.
seen someone from whoever Women's Crisis Center, but
Right.
who's heard stuff about it, so
Yeah.
unfortunately, you have 9 years.
No,
of
it's
questions.
good.
How
much time you got in?
Here lies the challenge.
Yeah.
The town's budget is
Yeah.
34 million, 39 million, 40 million, what's the?
It's
town's
about
budget?
42 million.
42 million, so 25% of the town's budget represents your budget.
Yeah.
You treat a population that is probably 2.5 times the population. So the question back is that Rick would have to go through years, he's always been through years here at least. I'll ask you the same question, which is what was it last year? What was your budget last year? If it's 10.4 this year, what was it last year? What was it the year before? And where do you see your growth? Is it based on program development? Is it based on cost of salaries and overhead? How much of the dollars that we're going to contribute are going to go to programmatic related costs and those services versus?
All of it, yeah. That's a great question. So to answer your question, the first part, the budget was about $11 million last year, and so we're going down a little bit. That's a good way to sort of look at it, the 40,000. I think it's challenging because it's not apples and apples. So for example, in the family planning program where we see the most people, you know, on average, people come in twice a year for a quick visit. That's very different from someone coming into a new day who's getting ongoing counseling for quite some time, you know, for over a number of months. So the level, but this agency, when I came in last year, had not done salary increases in 8 years, which I think is a serious problem in terms of the overall health of an organization. So we have really done a lot to make sure that we're spending the funds as wisely as possible and paying a living wage where we can ensure that we have adequate services. And so to that end, what I've been looking at with the team is what are services that we're doing that aren't as necessary, and then what are our core services that we can invest more in. And the sexual assault counseling, clearly last year we had a deficit of nearly $200,000 in the overall budget just for that program alone. So we're really looking to make sure that we are investing in the programs that are going to have the biggest impact and are, like I mentioned earlier, we're the only nonprofit who does sexual assault counseling in this area. That's it. That's not true for any other service I even know of. So, you know, there are a number of agencies that do domestic violence shelters or health care, but we're the ones who will respond. And so that's why to us, I think that this service is one of the agency's key, most important services, because without us, you know, that service doesn't exist. So that's why we're really trying, I would say, over time to grow. I think there's it's a public health problem, and there's not enough attention. There's not enough work being done in the schools, enough with law enforcement. I'm trying to go out and really meet with everybody to hear what more we can do, and we'll raise money to do that. But I may have to shrink in other areas in order to do that. I'm not as interested in just growing the overall budget, but making, you know, sure that the services in these individual communities that are the most necessary are being covered. So.
Sure.
Okay, so a new day is basically a section of the overall
Yes.
health imperatives.
Yes.
Because the scope of your services is so wide, how does this impact the residents of Abington and you know, we're at $5,000
Yeah.
and going towards the entire program or towards services for Abington residents, or, you know, how is that basically
So
designed?
we served about, I believe, 10 residents of Abington last year and did outreach to a number of different organizations for a total of about 25 hours. So I think that, you know, whether or not we get funding from the town, we're committed to doing the work in Abington. So it's not, you know,
Right.
It's just another way to make sure that we have, the appropriate staffing. I am really committed to increasing the prevention, and that's something that's not funded discreetly. We get, I think, $10,000 from the state. It's part of how we do business, but I think that if we can, get funds from all of the communities that we serve and raise private dollars and augment the overall federal and state money, that we can do more and more prevention.
And is $5,000 the standard that you request from all the participating towns and different things like that? Or or does it depend on the town's population, or?
Well, the smaller towns, that seems to be the standard. I think, again, with the big cities, it's a different situation, especially Brockton. So we're working closely with them. They gave us, I believe, $25,000 last year. But we have a number of initiatives we're trying to work with them on. So. We do also use a lot of volunteers, so we're trying to build that up too, so that we're not just relying on actual funding, but we can do the work through volunteers. That's 75. It's quite a commitment too. It's about a 35-hour training, so it's a lot. So we've got a group of really dedicated volunteers.
Mr. Chairman, I could just point out, the services that this group provides are not services provided by the town. So for us to have, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to provide services whether or not you get the local contribution. But in fairness, the town does need a place to refer, whether it's your public safety agencies or your social agencies, whether it's the Council on Aging or Veterans, or again, your public safety agencies or the school administration. Mm-hmm. We do need places to refer people who do need services that we don't provide. It's not good enough for someone to call our office and us to say, that really stinks. I mean, we really have to be able to provide some outlet for people. And as this particular program has changed over the years, it's still in some ways the song remains the same, in that it's an outlet for the town officials to place people who need services we don't provide.
And just one more thing, if there are, the point about the elders and veterans is really great too, because there are populations who we know are in need, who are at greater risk of not getting help. And so any connections to the Council on Aging or any other groups that you think would make sense for us to, I think that instead of just having our office in Brockton or Plymouth, we need to come where people are. So we could always hold a group, at the Council on Aging, or bring a counselor to here to make it easier for the residents too. So we really are open to doing what you need.
Ask a question. You mentioned there's 75 volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
How many employees in total?
So altogether, we have about 130 employees right now.
And Brockton
Altogether,
and Plymouth?
Yeah, well,
Wow.
Throughout our entire agency.
Okay.
It was 175 a year ago, so
Mhm.
we've, actually lost some staff due to funding cuts in other areas, but
Great.
we're, okay.
Excellent.
Well, thank you for your
Thank you.
consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Julia. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
coming. Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you.
Next would be Community Preservation Act, but we're gonna push that off.
Yes, but even though you're going to do that, but there is, you may have seen it in your mailbox, but there's some correspondence.
Yes.
Yes, and I did make copies of it for you to have in advance, and it just happened to come in the 12th. It's you'll see what it is, but I'll just wait till it gets.
Double-sided.
Of it, tried to do double-sided. Couldn't figure it out, so then I said, well, I'm just gonna staple it. And then it came out double-sided anyway, so I saved paper, but
You don't know how.
I don't know how I did that. That's being rather blunt, sure. This is just a memo that came in this past week from the county, CPA surcharges by town for 2013. Basically, the amount of money that is generated from each community in the county that is put into the CPA fund. And so you can see that, and obviously, I'm sure the proponents of this are going to point to that as part of the argument for adopting this. But I just thought, just to point this memo out to your attention, because I know these things get lost in all the mounds of paperwork everybody deals with here. So, and I am not prepared or intend to make any presentation beyond that. So.
We'll wait. Let me review it's good info for when we review that. So we'll try again to set that up for next week. Continued business, do you want to talk about either of those?
Just real quickly, tomorrow we are meeting with the financial team and to essentially unveil what we will be proposing as an operating budget for next year initially to our financial staff, who've all contributed, obviously. Presuming there's no major disagreement on what seems to be the reality of where things stand, that'll be circulated to the department heads by the end of the week. So I would suggest that within a week or two, however, I don't know what your history is, but when you want me to come in and basically tell you this is what the budget is shaping up to be next year, at least preliminarily, you let me know how you'd like to see that and how you'd like me to do that. But I would think to do something more public the week after next would probably be a good timetable, if that works for you.
Okay.
And I say that primarily because Dory's on vacation.
I was
for
just
a couple
gonna
days,
say that.
And there's probably gonna be a lot of paper pushing that I'd prefer to have some help with.
Okay.
Surely self-serving.
Yeah. So not next week, we'll do it the week after, which I don't know when that is. April.
And obviously, we have to try our best to get the petitioner in next week too.
That would be the only thing on the agenda next week, would be that petition.
So obviously, we need to make sure that we can solidify that before you meet again. And
Do you
without that.
want to provide his info through email to me, and I can be a real pest?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I actually have his phone number.
We could probably
With me.
mention the phone number right now.
Yeah. It's,
Let's
yeah,
not do that.
I have it right here.
Home phone.
Yeah.
Liaison reports? Review of minutes. We have a lot of minutes to review. You don't want to review minutes?
I prefer.
So start with the 4th. Matt and Sean were excused.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 4th, 2014 meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. March 5th, Matt is excused.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the March 5th meeting.
Second.
Those in favor? Opposed? Opposed? And then March 12th, excuse Stephanie, Sean, and Deb.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 12th meeting.
Second.
Just one comment.
Yes.
Superbly done.
What?
What
It
was
was superbly
the
done.
minutes?
We're recording the minutes.
The secretary did a great job on this.
I'll tell you, I love the smoke screen.
Well, let him enjoy his moment then.
No, that one particular meeting, they just threw paper after paper.
That was the point.
You should have that a week in advance to look at it.
Take that under advisement.
Yes, thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed?
No, I'm not.
that brings us to correspondence, which we already went through. We received the same thing in the mail. Looks to be the same. I'll pass that along. Next meeting is the 26th. Anybody have anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Those in favor? Opposed? Great.